This is a Film Stories original podcast. Hello and welcome everyone to the Xcast, your dedicated podcast all about the X-Files. The truth is in here. I'm your host Tony Black for this third of our roundtable discussions exclusively devoted to the patrons of our show. And in this episode, the focus of our topic is someone who at times is a contentious young lady, the first lady of the X-Files herself, Gillian Anderson. And joining me for this conversation is returning patron to the round table, Jen Ferguson. Hi Jen, how are you?
Hi Tony, it's lovely to meet you.
Yes, this is the first time we've spoken. Yeah, it's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and also appearing, I think on the show before, maybe on a round table, is Reynard Muldrake himself, Kurt North.
Hello, Tony. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah. Have you been on the round table before?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I've been on. I think both of them, haven't I? I think I haven't been on the shipper one for obvious reasons, but I've been on a couple of
Yeah, the patrons have heard the shipper one. The everyone else hasn't yet. That's coming soon, guys. So yeah, you're in for a treat there. You really are. So yeah, okay. I'm forgetting who's on what show. I can't tell you. I can't keep track anymore. I hope someone's collating all this information for me because I've no idea who's been on where. So many episodes. And last but not least, on his very first roundtable and his very first podcast, we're delighted to welcome another of our patrons, Mr. Adam Silver.
Hi Tony, how's it going?
I'm good. Yeah, it's a real treat to have you on. You've been involved in the Xcast support since almost pretty much the very beginning. You have, so it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you, and I apologise for making your first podcast experience probably terrible, knowing me. I hope you enjoy it, and you you'll want to do it again after this. But there you go. Who knows? But yeah, it's great to have you all on, guys. So let's just get into the topic at hand then. Gillian herself, who obviously last seen on our screens, of course, as Dana Scully in this year's season 11 of The X-Files, which finished just a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago from our vantage point as we record in mid-June. But we decided to make her the focus of our latest roundtable because she's an eternally interesting part of The X-Files and its surrounding fandom. So there's quite a fair bit to chew on with Gillian, really. So I'm going to throw out a question for you all to kick us off with. And, I suppose it's a broad question. It leaps off the back of the kind of conversations we've had about Season 11 in the past and things like this. But what did everyone make of her performance in the revival of Scully? And that's both Seasons 10 and 11, really. Was she the Scully you remembered or wanted, or wasn't she? So, Adam, since you're new to the whole podcast game, you go first.
Yeah, I think I've always felt like there was something a little off in her performances in seasons 10 and 11. I'm not quite sure what it is. I think the raspy voice kind of didn't help either, and the wig, honestly. But there are certain things like that just seems maybe more Stella or maybe more her Hannibal character sometimes than what I remember as Scully. I don't know if it's because of maybe Gillian's interpretation of what Scully might be as an older woman. Maybe that's why it was a little different. Or if she just kind of, maybe forgot how to play her exactly the same. But yeah, there just seemed to be, sometimes I would see the old Scully, but there were other times that were just sort of jarring for me.
I don't have as much of an issue with her in season 11 than I did with 10. I must admit. I think that she really struggled in 10, in my opinion. There was probably one moment in Founder's Mutation when they're looking down through all the windows where she's speaking to the little kid, where she becomes Scully, and it was like the Scully you're expecting. But you just didn't see that a lot in 10 at all. 11, I didn't have that much of an issue, or it just was in the back of my mind. I didn't really pay that much attention to it. But it did come out a lot in Familiar. I thought Familiar was, which actually is one of my favourite episodes of the season, but it just felt that one felt a bit tired. It felt like, again, what Adam was just saying there, that was she playing it that way, or is it just the way that her voice has changed? It's one of those really unusual things that I just can't quite put my finger on, really.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you that, yeah, for me, it wasn't the Scully that I remember, and I've noticed that even more as I've been watching the previous seasons a lot since 11 finished, and she's a different, presenting herself as a different character. I think it is a deliberate choice. I think that is her way of portraying sort of how she's been worn down over the years by all the sort of loss and all of the things she's gone through. So I think it makes sense within the story, and I think that is a voice that she puts on, because I've seen her in interviews, and that is not the voice she uses in interviews. So I think that was her way, I'm guessing, of portraying that kind of like that older, sort of slightly worn down Scully, that she's a different Scully than she was. I think she wanted to make her different, and I think that was the choice she made. It's not a choice that I love, to be honest. I get it. I get where it comes from. I get why she's doing it. But, I mean, honestly speaking for myself, I like the season 1 to 9 Scully a little better than the season 10 and 11 Scully. That's not my favorite Scully. I still love her, adore Gillian Anderson in every way, and I think she did a fine job for what she was doing. I think she played her very emotionally contained, very sort of like, almost depressed. But, to me, that's not super fascinating to watch. I don't like to watch that as much as I like watching. I'm in the middle of doing a season 8 rewatch right now, and she's got so much to do in season 8. There's so much emotion that she's feeling, and so much emotion that you can see it coming out. As much as she tries to hold it back as a character, you can still see it coming out, and you don't see that in 10 and 11, and I don't enjoy that as much.
Even I Want to Believe Scully is I think still the same Scully that we saw before, and that was 6 years after the original show ended, and so I don't know if it's a time issue, because again, there was a time gap there, but she seemed to come back to it easier than she did years later with season 10. I would say by contrast, I thought David Duchovny's been pretty great. I really like the way he's played older Mulder. I think it makes a lot of sense, and as I said, it just seems a lot more natural than the way that we're thinking Gillian chose to perform the older Scully in this manner.
It feels a bit like he slipped into it easier, I think, and especially in season 11. I think he really found Mulder in season 11 particularly.
In season 11, I think there's only one scene, and I think that was in Ghoulie, when they're in the car, when they're doing the iPad stroke Ford commercial, where he doesn't sound quite right, but there's only that one moment. I can't think of any moment in 11 that he's any different, really, and he does have a fantastic sort of arc over season 11, and he does portray that really, really well, where Gillian kind of just she definitely ups her game. I think she ups her game in season 11, but it's just not quite the same.
I think 11 she finds it a bit more, and I think there was a level of with 10 where I think it's really interesting that it's considered that she chose to perform that way. I think there's probably some truth to that, actually, definitely. But I think she's been informed a lot by various different things over the years since I Want to Believe. I think a lot of it probably is the fact that she doesn't live in America anymore, and living in the UK and being exposed to that culture and speaking in her original British accent and doing a lot of roles where she speaks British. Things like, Johnny English Reborn. Let's never mention that again. But, that kind of thing where she's been on stage, she's been in Streetcar Named Desire in the West End and things like that. So I know that's an American part, but it's being in that British sort of culture. But I think there's a little bit of that where she's maybe found it difficult in some respects to switch back into Scully. But I think I think she's found it harder to get back into the space of being that character, because as she said, and we'll cover this soon, she thought she was done, after I Want to Believe. I think they all thought it wasn't going to happen for years, but I think she got to the point, hadn't she, where she thought, Scully's the past for me now.
Well, I think she thought maybe there'd be one more movie, but I don't think she ever imagined that they would do more episodes. But yeah, I mean, we all know from what she said that she's not interested in it anymore. She really came back for just to kind of give it some closure, give maybe the fans some closure with doing these last 2 seasons. But, I mean, we know she's really not interested in playing Scully anymore.
Well, you've nicely queued up my next point there, Adam, so thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Because that's precisely the kind of thing she said. She's not been backwards and coming forwards about season 11 being it, the end, finito. So, I'm going to read a little bit of what she said back at the Winter Television Critics Association press tour, which she and David Duchovny did around the time the season was kicking off. And she said she was asked about, she'd already announced she's going to quit playing Scully, and she says, I arrived at the decision before we did the previous 6. So the season 10, what became known as season 10. I thought the previous 6 was going to be it. It was dipping our toe back in again and just meeting up again and making the most of it and getting to play these wonderful characters again. But the minute they mentioned that they might be interested in doing another, I thought, do you know what? That didn't feel like the right way to end it. As in the final moment on My Struggle 2. no kidding, Gillian. Yeah, But she said the way the writers were talking about doing another season, were we to do another season, sounded more like a good ending to me. And so when I was asked to do another season, I agreed to do another season. It never occurred to me, nor was it discussed or suggested that we were starting a new series. And that's a key point. Everyone is, a lot of people are like, oh my God, she's not doing any more. I think people forget that, this was never going to be 9 more years, of the X-Files. This was a bit of a gift. It was a bit like, yeah, let's do more with the stories untold, but let's come back and do more. I think people forget this, don't they? That this wasn't going to be another 10 years of her life.
Yeah, it was just a bonus, really. I mean, I think season 10 was a bonus, and if it had ended differently, I think probably no one would have really expected too much more. We might have hoped for it, but I think there might have been an expectation that was it. And then once we got 11, I think the expectations maybe started to rise a little bit that we would get more. And season 11 was such a good season for the most part that people were getting back into it. But I always kind of felt like it was a bonus, and I was fine with season 10 being the only extra season. I was fine with season 11, but I think, some people started to think this is a regular TV show now. Even though really we had a 2-year gap, it's clearly not a regular series, but it was, maybe they just were kind of victims of their own success because it was a good series, it was well done, the ratings weren't there, but the fans liked it, and I think it just got people excited for the idea of more, but I think that was an unrealistic expectation myself.
Well, this falls into my thought on the timing of that interview. Was it getting to a point where there was this expectation that season 11 was kicking off, it was being quite good, and then the timing of when Gillian said that, it kind of ruined it to a degree in my eyes, because you knew she was either doing one of two things, either saying that's it, which is what she's saying, but a lot of people took that it was a bargaining tool to try and make a, if she did come back to get the money on equal parts as it should be, or was it to ramp up the kind of the fan base to say we want more. It's the timing issue that that I have slight problems with, because I personally think it was time just to say, look, I've had enough. This is it. This is all you're going to get. But then it ruins the story to a degree for me.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in and disagree with that, because I've heard that certainly that's not an uncommon opinion by any means. I can understand that for some people it did kind of put a damper on the season for them, but I honestly feel like that network could have done something with that to turn it into a bit of a positive, because, I mean, there's been other shows that have had a final season, and the network promotes it that way and says, this is the last season, come and watch it, it's going to be, like, amazing. You got to see the X-Files final season. You watched it, 25 years ago. Surely you want to see the last one again. So I feel like they could have made that into a bit more of a positive, and it didn't have to be the damper that it probably was. And I'm not sure that it was Gillian's fault that just happened to be the time that they were asking her. That was, they were at an event promoting essentially the season, and they because there were already kind of an indication that she wasn't coming back. I think she'd said something at the New York Comic-Con back in the fall about that. So it shouldn't have been like a huge surprise, but I think it was kind of like, no, I really mean it this time, you guys, I'm not coming back. But I'm not sure what else she could have done there. I mean, like, I don't think Gillian is not one to BS. So, and when she's asked, I think she answers as directly as she feels she can. So, I don't know what she could have done in that situation. They put her in front of the cameras. They put her in front of the reporters. This was a possibility that she was going to say this. They already kind of knew that this was out there. So, I think they should have made more of it, and they sure as heck should have made more of the finale, knowing that it was the end. They could have really done something with it to turn it into an exciting, real finale that they didn't do, in my opinion. But I think they should have made a virtue of a necessity. That's just my opinion.
And she's been pretty honest about, that she didn't want to stick around long. So, yeah, I mean, I agree that when asked, I mean, what is she supposed to do? She's going to give her honest, view that she doesn't want to do more. But I know that, David Duchovny said he feels like it put an expectation on this season to be like a final season, to have everybody look at that maybe not what they designed it to be. But again, I'm not sure it's anything that they could have avoided, really. But, maybe you're right, where they could have taken advantage of that and said, this is going to be the final season, this is going to be. But it didn't seem like anybody was really interested in doing that. I think Chris Carter obviously saw this as an opportunity to really relaunch the show. I mean, I don't think he really looked at this like I think we all expected in the beginning before season 10 that, okay, this is going to be a chance to wrap up everything. But, I mean, I think he really saw it as to bring the X-Files back. But, obviously Gillian wasn't going to be on board with that.
Well, I think, as Chris Carter has proved many, many times, he has no idea how to end anything. So, yeah. So, I think you're right. I think he did, to some extent, think, we can get this back going. I mean, whether or not he was, of the mind of thinking this is going to go on for years and years, I doubt that. I think he probably thought he'd got more than 2 seasons in it. Once the revival had been a real success, the 6 dipping their toe in the water, But I think maybe it's ended earlier, and she's come out and said this earlier than he would have thought. I mean, and there's lots and lots of theories. If you dig deep online, there's lots of theories as to why Gillian Anderson may not want to do this show anymore. Some are, some I think have got some merit. Some I think are really out there, and I'm sure you've come across a few of them yourself. We won't go into all of them on this. You can go a bit mad looking at this stuff, and I think she's just said there's lots of things I want to do in my life and my career. This was part of what she said in this quote.
I don't think there's any reason not to take her at face value that she just wants to do other things, and she feels like she's done all she can with this character. She wants to retire it where it is. So I mean, I don't begrudge her that. I don't think there's anything wrong with her thinking that, and I don't think that's something anybody should really question. I mean, that's how she feels.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the same opinion as that. I mean, I just think that the timing was obviously my main concern on that. I mean, if you look at likes of Star Trek Discovery with the whole Vok thing, if you're into Star Trek, where they kept the actor really quiet, and everyone was saying, "No, we know who it is," but then you've got you've got someone coming out and basically saying what she said. And I take Jen's point absolutely. I think she's probably been fallen on the sword a little bit there, really, to be honest, thinking about it, because she's made that comment. But then there was Chris Carter said there's a chance to do without her and all that type of thing, and Fox never said anything, and Fox still didn't say anything until a good month and a half, 2 months after it finished it. That was it. So they weren't ever going to say this was going to be the final season, because they were hedging their bets. So I think from that point of view, I just think it was probably just a mistimed thing. But I don't think there's anything majorly deep involved in what it is. She's got a very strong opinion, and it's one of the reasons why we love her so much, is because she is so strongly opinionated and she is able to do other things. But she said what she wants, but she didn't get any backup, and I totally agree with Jen with that.
I didn't find it a surprise that she was leaving. I found it a surprise that she was coming back in the first place. I was shocked that I'd heard that there was going to be an X-Files revival, and I was a little worried because I'm like, ooh, who are they going to cast in this? And I was amazed to find out that it was going to be Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny. I was like, wow, that's amazing that they're willing to come back and do this again. So, and then to come back and do season 11, it was like, wow again. So, to me, the idea that there should be some reason why she's leaving, some mysterious reason, I don't feel the need to come up with one, because it's like, well, goodness gracious, she came back for 2. What more could we have wanted? It makes perfect sense that she's done now. I'm just surprised everybody else isn't done, but they just kind of, Chris Carter seems to want to keep things going as long as he can. And yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. There doesn't have to be a big explanation. She just wants to go on and do other things, and she is not short of other things to do.
Well, this is it. She doesn't need it anymore. And she hasn't really needed it for a long time. Their careers have been very interesting, really, and it's one of the things. Here's a little bit of a spoiler coming for the XCast Live podcast, the 24-hour marathon I'm doing, which I'll talk about another time. But part of that is going to be exploring their careers, sort of in between the X-Files and around the X-Files and things like that. And it's gone in an interesting direction for both of them. But I would argue that Gillian Anderson, on the whole, has done more creatively and bigger projects and things that have put her in a I would say she's more in demand and probably more famous in some respects now than he is in some ways. And I think she doesn't really need it. She can get work in England. She does a lot of work for the BBC. She does work for Netflix shows, things like that. She can still work in the US. She did things like Hannibal. She was doing American Gods. So and then do movies. And she's in plenty of those as well. And it's one of those things where she does hold some of the cards. She can turn around and say, yeah, I'm done. And she's not in need of it anymore.
Yeah, she certainly doesn't need it. I mean, she is in the kind of movie she wants to be in. She's in the kind of show she wants to be in. Does the plays she wants to do. So
yeah, I thought it was really gracious of her to come back, to be honest, because she really doesn't need it, and she is really busy otherwise. She doesn't even live in America anymore. So I was very appreciative that she was willing to do it, because she surely did not have to, and she did have to uproot her life, more than the folks that already lived in America to be able to do it. And yeah, she didn't need to do this, so I thought she really went above and beyond to come back and do this, and to put her all into it, do her best for the fans. I think really try to support the fans, and so I was appreciative of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, really, and I think even though there were elements of her performance that didn't always click with Scully, I think it was great that she came back, and it was great that she did she did 2 seasons, and yes, there was some back and forth, I think, about season 11 and her returning for that. I think she had to be talked into it a fair bit, but she did it in the end ultimately. And yes, we have a conclusion, and we'll cover this a little bit later, but we have a conclusion of sorts, so that's better than we had at the end of The Truth or I Want to Believe in some respects. We've had a little bit more closure on certain things, so it's if we can ever get closure in the X-Files, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
She really didn't promote the season this time around. I mean, she didn't really go on any of the talk shows or do anything to really promote season 11. She kind of just filmed it, and then she was done with it.
She was quite active on Twitter though. There was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that she did.
Yeah, not necessarily positive all the time.
I'm not sure if David Duchovny did any more than Gillian Anderson did. Gillian definitely did a lot online.
He was on several talk shows.
Was he?
Yeah, he did several interviews, like some of the late night, and then some of the. I mean, he also, to be fair, he also had his album and his other stuff going on. But he did go out, talk about the show, talk about, they showed clips of the episodes and everything. So there was promotion that he did for the show. But I think Gillian was just on James Corden, maybe. I don't think there was maybe a single actual reference to the X-Files. So.
Yeah, and David lives in LA, so it's easier for him to do that kind of stuff too. So fair enough. But yeah, no, I know that was one of the criticisms that she didn't do a lot to promote it. But
yeah, well, she
did. But I feel like she made up for it on Twitter because she did do a lot of behind the scenes stuff and a lot of interacting with fans too. So I think she did what she could, and she even live tweeted some of the episodes and stuff. So I think she kind of did what she could from where she was.
Yeah, well, I think from the way that the X-Files was treated over here in the UK, I don't think there was much chance to promote it, to be absolutely honest with you. But there you go.
Yeah.
And if you're going to if you're not going to show that you're really that bothered about something, go on a chat show host like James Corden. God, we honestly, right. I don't know if Kurt agrees with me here, but most British people can't stand that man. You know what I mean? I know a lot of Americans love him, but you can keep him. It's fine.
Oh yeah, that explains my Scottish husband's opinion because he hates him too.
Yeah, I just can't abide the man. But yeah, you mentioned a minute ago, Adam, about how some of the Twitter stuff hasn't always been positive, and this is interesting because this touches on an area which is. I'm curious to hear what you think about the fandom in terms of Gillian, because we talked about fandom in the very first Roundtable, which Sarah Blair hosted. But it's the X-Files has a really diverse ecosystem of fans, and there's a real cross section of them who are diehard Gillian Anderson fans, and to some extent they appear to be more fans of Gillian than they do really the show, certainly at this point. So what do you guys think about the fandom response? In terms of Gillian, and not returning for any more X-Files or during season 11, and what about her response to this core group she has? Because I think sometimes that can be a mixed bag in certain ways, can't it?
I'm not sure what to say about this because I don't want to get in trouble with their fans because they'll come for me.
They won't listen to this. Don't worry.
There's no question she has very intense fans, and I think you're right that they are probably more Gillian fans than they are X-File fans. She is their queen, and she can do no wrong, and I get that. I can be that way sometimes myself, but they're very sensitive about how she's treated, and especially how they perceive how she's been treated on the X-Files and how she's been treated by Chris Carter, I think. And so, and Chris Carter hasn't helped by some of the things he has said in interviews and some of the ways that he has sort of worked with Gillian. I know there was a lot of controversy amongst Gillian's fans and amongst a lot of X-File fans when it was revealed that Gillian Anderson, and I don't think David either knew until the day of shooting what the ending was going to be of My Struggle for the finale. And I think there was a lot of upset. And Chris Carter actually said in an interview that David saw the script before Gillian for the rest of the episode. I don't know how long before Gillian it was. He never explained what he meant by that, but people really took that amiss, that was disrespectful to Gillian, that she wasn't being kept in the loop as much as David was. And so I think a lot of folks felt like really ran with that as a really core example of, Gillian Anderson deserved better kind of thing. It was how she was used in the finale, but it was also, I think, a lot triggered by what Chris Carter said as well. So I think they really wanted to rush to her defense to defend the Queen.
I hadn't heard that David saw the script before her, but I mean the general concept of not giving them the last pages until the time of shoot. I mean that's been done several times before. I mean that's basically to contain the spoilers to keep it from getting out there sooner. So I mean, that was done with Requiem, and I think the other times that the show might have ended. So that in itself is not unusual.
Yeah, and I think as well because there's not a lot for Gillian to do in that episode either. That David Duchovny probably did have most of the script as well, so that probably was a major factor in that.
It's one of those things where I've written a bit about this, and the whole issue with My Struggle 3 and some of the choices made, and then leading into My Struggle 4, and I freely admit that I'm a bit of a Chris Carter defender. I think he's misunderstood to an extent, but I do think his comments were a little bit, misjudged at times. Some of his interviews were a little bit, there was a bit of a tin air with him there in terms of fandom, and I think it did rile up a lot of the Gillian fans specifically. But I think what do we think about how she reacts to this? Because she doesn't really come out and talk about this as such, but then she doesn't always necessarily have to, does she? She kind of uses her Twitter sometimes in order to, maybe make a certain point or, lean towards a certain view without actually coming out and saying anything, and do we think, what do we think about it? What do you think her viewpoint is on a lot of this stuff?
Well, I think that on Twitter, yeah, definitely she puts just enough out there that it's like a Rorschach test. You can see whatever you want to in it. And so she said a couple of things on Twitter, like one of her tweets from behind the scenes of it looks like it's the last scene actually, from certainly the last episode. She uses the word resigned, I think, to describe either herself or David or both of them. And so people read a lot into that. And then, what was it, just like a couple of days after the finale aired, or that week, or maybe a week later, that this was the tweet that everyone freaked out about, where all she said, I think, was something like, "Oh boy, do I ever hear you," and it's a gif of Scully like sort of face palming, and everyone freaked out about that because, of course, she'd had her defenders up in arms about how she'd been treated, and everyone saw that and read it as she is just crapping all over the X-Files, crapping all over Chris Carter, all over the finale and how she was treated. So she doesn't say exactly what she means, of course, when she says, "Do I ever hear you?" But people took that certainly as meaning, the criticisms that people had of how she had been treated, and they took it as sort of a tacit agreement. But again, we don't really know what she meant by that. So she's she's a bit sly about it. She implies things without really coming right out and saying them, and people take them as they will.
I think it's hard to find another interpretation of it, though. She knows, that's what the majority of her Twitter followers were saying. And then she says, "Boy, do I ever hear you." So I think that's pretty, a somewhat veiled, agreement with what they're saying. And also, I think outside of Twitter, some of the conventions she's done recently, she more or less said that she thought things were tone deaf. I think she called it unconscious or something. But she agreed more with, she obviously was trying not to say a lot, which makes sense. But she was, basically as much as she could, saying she agrees with the people who are critical of.
Yeah, at the end of the day, she is a professional actor, so she, there has to be a kind of reservedness on saying exactly what you mean, because you're right in the boiling pot. The episode and the series has just finished, and she's going to be asked these questions, but a lot of them are really loaded questions, and they're difficult to go through and say exactly what she means when you're so close to the subject matter. So I totally appreciate the way that she's doing it. Is she being a bit sly? Is she trying to push out a little bit of what she really feels? Probably, but she's not. I don't think she would ever go out and actively say it unless it was in an autobiography somewhere. When she's going to tell all, and we'll take it from that. If we get that, then great. But
that'd be a hell of a book.
Yeah.
Oh man,
wouldn't it?
Twitter is dying for Gillian Anderson to write her tell-all book. Her fans are just waiting for it.
But when she tweets, that is a conscious effort there. It's one thing, like you're saying, if she's asked a question, she has to respond in some way. But her intentionally tweeting certain things, she knows what she's doing. She knows that, internet articles are going to be written about what she says. So if she says something that's negative or perceived negative about the show, that, she knows that Variety and Entertainment Weekly and all those places are going to publish an article saying Gillian Anderson dumps on X-Files or whatever. So there's no way there's no way she doesn't know that's going to happen. So she's you have to and that's been my problem with some of her tweets, is that I'm like, okay, I understand your opinion. I'm not saying you shouldn't be allowed to say anything, but when you do that, that you're, as I said, articles and stuff are going to be written that says that, Gillian lays the truth about the X-Files, like the stuff that we saw. Like when she criticized the ratings, and she perceived that they were, the people were blaming her for why the show was probably not coming back, and she tweeted that, no, it was because of and it was not a right number, but she said something like 77% of the viewers were lost. I mean, that's like dumping on your own show, basically. And that stuff is going to be written that says basically that she's bashing the show. And I mean, obviously she's gonna. I think she was being defensive there. I don't think people were saying that her not coming back was the sole reason that the show's not coming back. But it just seemed a little overly defensive and kind of throwing the show and Chris Carter and other people under the bus to me to basically say, no, it's because nobody wanted to watch the show anymore. I mean, even defending yourself, even when you need to defend yourself a little bit, I mean, that's pretty big to say, to do that and say, no, people didn't watch the show anymore. So.
Yeah, I think that she reacted a little bit to that. Now that was a reaction to something quite specific as well. It was an article, I think was a TV line that, I mean, the headline was something like, X-Files not coming back following Gillian Anderson's departure, which kind of implied a cause and effect. And so, yeah, she did react a little bit to that with that whole, actually it was because the ratings dropped 77%, which, I mean, I don't know if it dropped 77%, but...
It was 77% from the season 10 premiere to the season 11 finale, which is not
But she's right though. It was because of the ratings. I mean, that would be my understanding of the situation. The ratings were very poor by the end, and even if she had agreed to come back, I don't know if there would have been another season.
I suppose this is the big thing, really. Would she have done any more? Because it's where she goes from here. Really, is the question. She's not doing any more X-Files. She quit a role on American Gods, where she was playing media for Brian Fuller when he left the show. It almost feels like she's moving away from, Hannibal's finished. Well, probably. There's rumours it might come back, but whether she'll be back on it, who knows? It feels like there's an increased move away from the US, and maybe working more in the UK and working on things like that. So, I mean... That's the thing. Where does she go from here? What are the next moves? Obviously we don't know specifics, potentially, but what do we think? And if it came back to it and they were all saying, right, we want to do a season 12, here's a ridiculous amount of money, would she come back?
No, she doesn't need the money. I don't think it's about being paid more. It's about what she wants to do creatively and all that. And she obviously right now doesn't want to do it. Maybe in 5, 10 years she'll feel differently. Now whether there'll still be an opportunity for her to come back at that point, I don't know. But I mean, this happens a lot of time with actors. We're like, oh, I'm done with this, and then later after some time passes, they'll consider it again. I mean, she may do that, but she's definitely done for now. And I mean, it's most likely the show's not coming back. We don't know that for sure if it's not coming back in some form. I mean, all Fox said was that there were no plans right now. I mean, we know the ratings weren't great. There's not a whole lot of reason for them to bring it back as far as that, but no one said that, nothing's going to happen with the show at all, period. We don't know.
And Fox doesn't seem to have many shows left, quite frankly, at this point. So it was starting to look increasingly likely at one point that the X-Files might come back. I mean, I was sure that it wouldn't, but then as the cancellation started to roll in sort of April and May, that's when people, I think, actually started to panic a little bit and think, oh my goodness, they might bring the X-Files back, but it wasn't in a good way. Everyone was like, no, we don't want it to come back. While everybody else was organizing online campaigns to bring back their show, the X-File fans were organizing campaigns to not bring back their show. So there was just no taste for another season of the X-Files at that point. I mean, I think that was probably partly because of how the taste in people's mouths after the finale. But it was also because people didn't want it to come back without Gillian. I say people, not everyone, of course, felt that way probably. But certainly a lot of folks just did not want it. It was like, there's been enough damage done with my struggle for, we don't want any more trouble. And so I don't think anyone even wanted it back at that point. But yeah, I think that I agree with Adam that given a few years, maybe if it were to come back as like a movie or something like that, then maybe Gillian Anderson might be interested in it again once she's done some other things and done some other interesting things. Then maybe she'd be up for one more movie, because she knows that it didn't end great. It was not a terrific ending, and I can imagine that she might want to come back if she felt like the script indicated that there was going to be a decent, not a great ending, because that's too much to hope for, but even a decent ending. I Want to Believe had a decent ending. So if they did another movie like that, I can see maybe she'd come back. But yeah, there might need some time first.
I think the only problem with a movie now, a third movie, is that, well, two things. The first one being that you would have to, like any movie, you would have to kind of try and re-explain the concept of the show and put them in a position where you've kind of got to ignore a lot of the stuff that's happened before in some respects. Fight the Future was different in that, it was in the middle of a season. It was quite a unique thing, that was. I Want to Believe didn't really answer any of, didn't follow up the truth at all, really. It just kind of ignored a lot of that. And that was a big problem with it. So I think now you've got a problem of, having to do that, and with two stars who aren't big household names. And the other thing is in the same way that a lot of movie stars are, and you have a budget problem in that, I Want to Believe was made for peanuts and it earned nothing, mainly because it was put up against The Dark Knight. But you'd have the X-Files, which is don't get me wrong, is a big brand, it's a big property, but it's not a property right now that is on a high. Not like something like Marvel or Star Wars or things like that, which means it probably wouldn't get a massive budget, which means that it wouldn't really have the money to make anything of significant, power and value. So I think, and it's all about returns. A move, that's why we have such prestige TV these days, things like Game of Thrones, Westworld, because they have the budget that old blockbusters used to have or old major movies used to have, whereas the big movie's now being made for $200 million, and there's no way the X-Files would get that budget. So I think the problems with the movie, I think it's almost certain we'll never get an X-Files movie with these actors at this point. I think you might get a reboot movie with younger rebooted Mulder and Scully actors, but I don't think you get it with these guys. But I completely agree with a lot of your points there, but I think she would come back for a film, definitely. Actually, I think that could be the tempter.
The last opportunity for a movie was 2012, when they could maybe have done a last movie to, a Fight the Future type movie, but that wasn't to be.
Or maybe even before that. I think 2007 they were pushing it, really. I think they should have done, if they really wanted the movie franchise to take off, I think it should have happened in like 2004. 2005, and then build on that. They did it all too late, really.
Yeah. They had lost a lot of their momentum by that time.
It was a problem. I suppose the final question then, before we go, is, it ties into what we've just been talking about, and whether or not the X-Files comes back. And it's, the X-Files is never going to die. We know this. It's going to be back in some incarnation at some point. But if, David Duchovny's gone on record as saying, I'm cool either way. I'm chill. I'll do it again if you want. I'm happy to leave it if not. But would it work without Scully and Gillian? And this is the big question, because if Chris Carter goes, David, should we do some more? We can't have Gillian, but should we do it anyway? And they go, yeah. And then Fox go, okay, all right, let's do it. But she's not involved. Is it gonna be the X-Files?
Not for me. It's not. I mean, just speaking for myself. For me, we had seasons 8 and 9 largely without David, and they're certainly not my favorite seasons by any means, and a lot of folks don't even recognize them as legit seasons. But I think they're still watchable, more watchable than a season without Gillian Anderson would be. I'd rather have a season with Gillian and without David than a season with David and without Gillian. And maybe it's just because I'm a big Gillian fan and I'm a big Scully fan, and I can't imagine the show without her. I mean, the handful of episodes that she was not in don't give me any kind of hope that the show could work without her. But that's my take on it. I can't imagine it working at all, just because she brings so much. I mean, they both do, though. I mean, season 8 that I'm in the middle of right now, it's clearly lacking something in the episodes without David Duchovny. You need both of them, and one without the other really doesn't work. And if I had to pick one or the other, I'd pick Gillian Anderson just because she's my favorite.
I don't think you'd be on your own. What about you guys?
No, for me personally, I would still watch a season with David Duchovny, but I'm very much of the reboot or a different story, in the same universe than actually having David on his own. They work so well together. Season 11 proved that, and I'm one of the first ones to say that I love season 8, and without David in it, some of the episodes without him were fine, and season 9 there was 3 or 4 episodes that were great with John Doggett, but I just feel that we've been down that road a couple of times before. Gillian Anderson has basically played Scully to death. There's not much more you can do with Scully's character, to be absolutely honest, because she's been through everything. And I just feel it needs that time to breathe. And it is interesting the way that Fox haven't really said it's being cancelled, like Adam was saying before. They've kind of like saying, well, this is a franchise that is or will be in the future a gold mine to go back to. So they're just resting it, putting it to bed. I think that's probably the way that I would go. If David Duchovny and Chris Carter got together and did another season, definitely watch it without a doubt. But I just feel it's time that we need that distance, and we need to see what fresh ideas come out of it. Like the episodes like Familiar, which was Van Allen's episode, which was very familiar, but it was proving that the story can still be told. We just need to find a new way of telling that story with different characters, or with a reboot with new characters playing them. But that if it is new characters like a Chris Pine in Star Trek, then we need significant distance between that and it starting again.
Yeah, I think if anything were to happen right now, it would be like it would have to be like a William spinoff or something like that. It obviously wouldn't work with David Duchovny with a new partner or something. That wouldn't be a good idea. But more than likely, everybody's saying is that in a few years it's going to be some kind of reboot or something spin-off, something like that.
Which I think is going to be really hard for people to swallow. And I think there's a whole other podcast discussion on this that I think we'll do at some point on the X-Cast about what people might think of a rebooted X-Files, or an X-Files without Mulder and Scully, a spin-off, a reboot, whatever, especially if Mulder and Scully are being played by new younger actors, which I honestly think is an inevitability. I don't think it's a question of if, I think it's a question of when. And I think it's going to be, when that day comes, I think it's going to be really, really difficult. And I think you'll end up with a similar situation as you have in a lot of the other fandoms that have done this. Things like, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Star Wars now, where you're getting characters played by new actors who are just fundamentally identified with, these legends on screen. And both of them, Gillian and David, they are legends. There's no two ways about that. They are living legends to any X-Files fan. So I think, and for Gillian especially, I think out of the two of them, she's harder to replace, oddly enough. Because I think, it's funny, whenever you guys obviously listen to the show, whenever we get someone do the 5 tweets of X, the 5 questions, it's taken over, the 5 questions of X. Everybody, almost, when they're asked who their favourite character is, almost everybody always says Scully. Every single time. It's very rare you get another character. And I think that says it all, to be honest. So, I think, I don't think you could do it without her. And I think she knows that, really. And I'm not saying she's doing it she doesn't want to do this out of any kind of malice or anything like that. I think it's just purely that she wants to move on. She doesn't feel like there's anything more she can bring to it. It's a big upheaval to do it, like the things we've talked about. But I think she's probably aware that if she's done, then it's done. Especially for a lot of people. Well, that's a downer way to end this, isn't it? We need to end on a brighter note. So, woohoo! It's the X-Files. So thanks for joining me.
Great way to end my first podcast. Jeez.
Yeah. As like I said, you're never going to want to do another one now. But no, it's been real fun, guys, talking about Gillian with you and you coming on this Patron Roundtable. My thanks once again for your support of the show. You make an increasingly old man very happy, and also help this podcast crucially to continue in the form and grow and develop. So thank you so much, all of you, for coming on and supporting the show like you do.
You're welcome.
And we'll give some details about how you can become a patron if you listen to the credits of the show once we're done, because you could be on one of these Patron roundtables, joining these wonderful podcasters talking about the X-Files. If you're financially able to support the show, which would be a really great for the entire X-Cast. But that's all to come. Before then, guys, do you want to tell the listeners where they can find you online if you're knocking about to talk more X-Files or anything else? So, ladies first. Jen, how about you?
Oh, thank you. I am on Twitter, and my handle is GenXFile. That's JENNXPHILE. And as the handle implies, it is a dedicated Twitter account just for the X-Files. So I talk about the X-Files all the time at the moment. If you want to see me bellyaching about Season 8, I'm doing that on a daily basis, and occasionally saying nice things about it too. So please join me. Let's talk about the X-Files. It's a fun place to hang.
You've got a real lot of following with that as well now. You've got loads of people you chat to and, like a lot of your posts. It's great. It's really good.
I've met some amazing people on X-Files Twitter. Twitter is a grim place a lot of the time, but ever since I started my X-Files account, it has brought joy into my life. And there are some amazing fans out there that, it's a wonderful fandom. It's honestly, I've had disagreements with people, and they've been just the nicest disagreements I've ever had on Twitter. And people are just really great there. So it's a great place to be. If you haven't experienced X-Files Twitter, then you should.
I second that. Twitter in general is one of those things that if you use it in the right way with the right people, it's great. It doesn't have to be the decline of civilization necessarily.
Exactly.
Kurt, what about you? Where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter again, yeah. My handle is at @Muldrake, so it's RMULDRAKE. As it happens, as of right now, as we record this, I'm on question 2 of the 5 Tweets of X of Season 1, Episode 1. So my challenge over the next few months is to go through 5 tweets every day, questions on an episode. So I'm going to start from the beginning and go right through to season 11. So that should be a bit of fun for everyone to come and join me. I did do this over since last August. I did it for about 6 to 8 months, doing different questions on various different seasons. But I've decided to do it episode by episode. So that'd be something fun for everyone to join in.
You're basically doing you're instead of a pod watch, you're doing a tweet watch.
I'm doing a tweet watch.
No. That's awesome.
Great.
That does sound great. Yeah, absolutely. Check that out, guys. That's brilliant. Finally, Adam, how about you? Where are you lurking online?
Well, I do the X-Files Lost Episodes Twitter account, which is a parody account.
Yeah, and they are brilliant, by the way. They're fantastic.
Which, thank you. Hopefully as funny as I think it is. But it's at XF_Lost Episodes. So I enjoy doing that. And then, otherwise, I just comment and post too much on the basement.
You can never post so much on the basement. It's fine. Keep posting too much. It's okay. And the the Lost Episodes is great. It's really, really good.
Yeah. Everyone needs to follow that if they're not following it already, because they are very entertaining.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely. Check it out, guys. But, yeah, thanks again for coming on the show. We'll be back very soon for more continued Season 3 coverage. I think our next episode for you guys is DPO with the Lightning Boy, Darren Peter Oswald. Yeah, we'll be back for more supplemental episodes talking about X-Files topics. I think the Shipper special is very, very, very close around the corner, so that'll be a lot of fun. Woohoo! Yes. That's a polite laugh there by Kurt. I like that there. That's the I won't be listening, but there you go.
Unfortunately, I've already listened to it.
It is a great, whether or not, right, I challenge people, if you're not a Shipper fan, listen anyway, because it's a really, really entertaining, interesting episode that might change your mind a little bit. And I'm kind of an agnostic Shipper. I find I'm not a big sort of, oh my god, I watch it for that. But whenever I watch it and they have a nice little moment, I'm like, oh. So I'm kind of in the middle. Anyway, yeah, check that out, guys. But once again, thanks for listening to this latest Patron Roundtable. We'll be back for another one very soon. But until then, as always, trust no one. The X-Cast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and presented by Tony Black, alongside a dedicated group of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find us on Twitter at the X-Cast, and on Facebook if you type in the X-Cast, or at our group X-Files Basement, an X-Cast podcast fan group, where you can continue the discussion about all things Mulder and Scully. If you want to support the X-Cast further, you can now subscribe and become a patron of the show on Patreon. On Google, just type patreon.com/the Xcast. That's Patreon. You'll see all of our tiers, subscription options and perks, which include early access to episodes, bonus content such as commentaries on X-Files episodes, access to a patron chat zone, and even appearing on one of our patron roundtable discussions. We would appreciate any support you can give the show, so just go to patreon.com/the Xcast to find out more. Our title music is provided courtesy of Will A, who you can find on Twitter at IamWillAYE.